Rise and shine. This is Dr. Coach K. For those that do not know who I am the founder of Mia Magazine. I am the coach that coach leaders, teams, communities, and governments on social responsibility, social accountability, and transformative leadership and transformative teamwork and team building. There's a lot in that statement. As you can see, it manifests in the world one by one, globally and differently, and customization to the commercial industry as well as the globalization. Those that always tell me that I need to talk in my lectures user friendly, it's basically, as we said, on the streets and urban communities, it is the popular way to say, we got this. Go in the paint. Make that day happen for you, internally or externally, for the good and for the righteousness for everyone, for those that are spiritual and believers. So we would like to do the introduction. When I say we, I mean myself, my team, my household, my fan base, and my business empire. Together, we unify to be a solidarity and energy in the world, high vibration, a high performer, and high productivity in the world. In our universe, actually, if you want to believe, you're multidimensional, right? Or multifaceted human being or spiritual being or infinite and immortal being. It depends on your studies, right? And your disciplines. For those that are very intuitive. So let's begin on our chat today, our lecture coaching session. Hopefully you can glean from this conversation. And out of 70,000 blogs, posts, articles, white papers, you name it, I've been interactive on the web, interactive on the internet. Whereas face to face, I've slowed down over the years because I realize now that the future is virtualization, artificial intelligence, as well as avatar living. The face to face is not going to be terminated or expired, of course. It's not going to be bankrupt, but it will be remotely used as a seasoned process. We're not going to be a society that uses face to face as a normalcy or social normalcy because of the changes that we will have to adapt to. The adaptation of the direction of our responsibility or lack thereof. We know that now we have to come together as a society or societies, communities. We have to be more collaborative, but at the same time, face to face, we know now time is valuable. And we know now that face to face is like dog years. It takes a lot of our time to do face to face. And so we can be speed of light and get more done and be multi task oriented when we do remotely or virtualization operation. Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to get interrupted a lot because my studio is connected as an app on the internet, so I get a lot of interruptions from my notifications. I try to turn it off, but it does what it wants to do. So if you see the interruption, please just bear with it. So back to what I was saying, and we realize now that our time is valuable, and we also know that face to face is like dog years. It speeds up time. So we are definitely 7 years older when we do a face to face moment. So, like a minute of face to face is like 7 years on our life and lifestyle. Whereas if you can say we add on years when we virtual, so that means we are younger, so to speak. So I know that's confusing, but let's just say we become immortals on virtually and we become mortals face to face. So we have to use our time wisely face to face. And we're learning that more and more as we develop relationships online and build our businesses online, and how information is being used responsibly and lack thereof. So, with that said, I'm also the founder of this movement of social responsibility and social accountability. Yes, I can say that I am the guru and expert of that. People say, don't you think that's arrogant or cocky or bold in the absence of people to judge you? And that depends on who you are. If you're a worker bee, you work a lot, you understand you don't get your accolades, you don't get your sentiments, you don't get your awards, you don't get your privileges or power. So you only get it through the word of and the power of your word, your mouth. And so you got to learn how to use it as you would money, a currency. So your voice, your words that come out of your mouth becomes your currency. Your time becomes your currency. How you speak becomes your currency. The words that come out of your mouth. So people can see you as arrogant. People can see you as bold. But if you're a worker bee or a slave or a servant or a laborer that get undervalued, that do not get representation in the law, that do not get the power and privilege that is equal to your counter, partner. You become the feminine or the weaker vessel by sense of social gratifications. Then you got to seek your accolades or your rewards in other realms, your other dimensions. And so guess what? It comes out of attitude. So your attitude becomes your power, right? Your confidence becomes your power. I was very empowered by that meme I saw on the internet. So that explains why I do what I do as a personality type A, is a worker bee. I'm excellent in my work ethics when it comes to work, but I don't get the results of my work. And just like my ancestors, they did not get their reparations. They did not get their accolades. They did not get their superiority or their sovereignty. So guess what happens? It manifests. The adaptation manifests differently, like liquidization of your assets. Things manifest in different forms when you block one form. And so my ancestors, as well as myself, do not get the value of my work ethic. So it comes out, or it oozes out of me in different forms, like my attitude. And so here we are. So I'm going to hear, and you're going to hear me give myself what I feel I deserve. So I deserve the ownership of the movement of social responsibility and social accountability. Out of 70,000 or more posts, blogs, and interactions virtually, I'm sure I saturated the market to build something called the social responsible way. And that can be said in many ways, but it's still the roots of the tree. Comes back to the anointing that was given to me through the studies of all the experts that I had gleaned from. I know people say it's plagiarism, but plagiarism is when you adapt an expert as your own. I'm not adapting an expert as my own, like Einstein or the many lectures I've heard or listened to or read of different thoughts or thinkers in their ways of methods and models like Christ or the stories like Superman or the Amazonian women of Wonder Woman. These fictional as well as non-fictional, characters have been empowering me and inspirational, like Harriet Tubman. But when you develop these things into a chemistry, right, in a physics, in a biological way, it sets itself in as an incarnate entity, embodiment, and that's how it becomes a custom designed embodiment of all the things into one, and you get different measurements of it, incremental or vastness of it. It's all a formula. And that formula, if you're a computer scientist or mathematician or a chemist or a physicist, you know that formula is very unique. It's very one, right? One formula is like 1+1. You can get 1+1 in many ways, but the formula of 1+1 is only one. You can do 1 times 1, but it's not 1+1. So, like 1+0, but it's not 1+1. You can get, 2+0 is still, or 2 times 1. Sorry about that. I gotta get the formulas right. They equal 2, but their formulas to arrive at that 2 is differently. And that's why it's not plagiarism. After you commit to acknowledging who these entities are, because people recognize the work, they're not going to give you the credit. They recognize the tree, right? The branches, but they'll recognize your stump, your trunk, because it'll come out as one and only, no duplication. And that's where you are born in the virtual world. That's what happened to me. You grow into the entity of all of those voices, whether it's a small amount, large amount. It's like chemistry poured into you until you're full. And then you matured. People call it, maturing, like how you cultured milk. When it's matured, then it becomes a substance. It becomes a complete package. So here we are. So I'm the founder of the Social Responsibility and Accountability Movement, and I have manifested these products and services from that research and investigation of social justice when I was starting my social justice platform through the powerful opportunities I received through feminism, womanism, and the studies of women's, gender studies in college, and then science, and then communications, and all of the freedom and liberation of exploring, discovering other experts to mingle with each other. I also was able to get an opportunity to work with Jones International before they went out of business. They had excellent caliber of curriculum and educators who drove me into excellence. And I thank God for that. And the many other colleges I had participated in coursework. Can't name them all because I have participated in many trainings and education systems that I absolutely enjoyed, like a drill sergeant or boot camp or some type of campus-like setting. I am definitely grateful for the opportunities that was given to me. So here I am, founder of the Micronation Universe movement. Here I am, founder of Mia Magazine. Here I am, founder of Mia Tips, which I call MTX. the urban ranger and park ranger, Peace Corps. Instead of calling it Peace Corps, I'm talking about Urban Corps. And here I am, working on reparations campaign globally to change the game on how we treat each other. And lastly, but not least, I'm here developing as a coach, as a mentor, as a trainer, any poverty stricken community leader or team that's interested in changing the game, elevating from their circumstances and becoming excellent in what they have and who they are, and working with what they got. I'm here developing businesses, communities, and their lifestyle choices through coaching sessions. I used to do one-on-one. I do it once in a while, but now I do it globally through my audio, my podcast. And one day I'm going to expand it into my radio, television, or video shows when I'm ready to do more face to face on virtually. I wanted to do an avatar segment, but every time I create an avatar, it gets, we call it disconnected, because we understand people are not ready for the avatar ways. They are getting there. I remember when I started, there was no such popularity around the avatar movement. I love the movie, The Last Airbender, which was the inspiration of my avatar model movement. And then it developed into a new movie, which was the Avatar movie. And people started to be like, okay, we recognize this name now. Avatar is an ancient, belief system from the Hinduism. And it became popular through my Avatar model movement, where I gleaned from all of these images and scripts, you could say. I'm not plagiarizing because they're not founded on these things, but they were inspired by these things. And now you have a world of Avatar cartooning and Avatar movies. So that's being built on special effects. And I'm sure it's going to be more developing manifestations in the artificial intelligence world, as well as virtual reality gaming systems. And who knows how far my avatar model, framework, theoretical framework will be passed on to generations using game theory, play theory, and constructivism. As we know, that comes from different disciplines. So this is the scholarly work, the academic work that produces these systems and processes for user-friendly urban street terminology. I'm basically saying, this is how this is how the slang begins. This is how the culture starts through popularity and fame, right? And this is how we get our swag on, is to develop these opportunities and make it accessible. One of the biggest things that drug markets are known for is making it accessible. And once they get you addicted, they make it costly that you're willing to lay your life down to achieve it or to attain it. In a sense, that's what it means on both sides of the fence of academia and urban street societies. You can have a user friendly to say, hey, we want a swag. And then you have a scholarly, academic, saying theoretical framework, processes and systems that work. We don't want defects. We don't want defective. We don't want dysfunction. We don't want these things any longer to be a part of our culture. But if you look at it, negative is part of mathematics. We just got to learn how to rise above it. We have to learn how to interrupt it. We need to learn how to prevent it, make it few and far apart. And we need to learn how to engage with it, where we are mastering over it instead of each other, instead of our environment. There's some liberation in the living systems, but we can master over systems and processes and frameworks, which is the abstract systems and not the concrete systems. Living systems are the concrete systems. And when we understand that we need each other, we're interdependent, we are connected some way, we have more investment in each other or more value to understand where the end game is. It's like playing sports. If you go on a team, you may not like everyone on the team, but you know it's going to take all of the team to win that game. To be an undefeated champion, you have to make sure everyone wins on your team, the good, bad, and the benched. Because without each other, when it's time to substitute for each other, it takes every little bit to make it to the end game. And that's what generation we're in, because we understand that truth, and that truth is real. And it's always half activated. It's just some generations were sleeping to it, and some generations ignored it. But at the end of the day, it was always activated in the world. Now, what chances is this? I'm doing my little my session, and we have outside construction happening. So just ignore it. I got to address it because I'm going to finish this session. I don't want anything to stop what I've started. I want to finish it. So let's begin. We got the introduction out. We have the coaching session started. It's rolling. And now we're going to do the game plan, the playbook by play. And then we're going to try to implement it, practice it, and refine it, and master it, and become mature in it so that you can do extraordinary things with the basics, right? So let's begin. We're going to talk and interact with the rich get richer and the poor get prison ideology, class, and criminal justice by Jeffrey Raymond and Paul Layton. The reason why this book is the book that I coach out of, because you gotta understand the least and the greatest. The least shall be the greatest, and the greatest shall be the least, and it goes back and forth, right? Until it resolves itself and everyone becomes one, where the least is the greatest is the least, and it's all in one, right? You have that kind of spectrum or swing back and forth. The reason why I use books that talk about the prison complex or about death, because these are the systems that we have not mastered yet. These are the systems that are defective, right? Is disease, sickness, and death, and prisons, which is imprisonment, is isolation, alienation, right? Unusual punishment, cruelty, and people say tough on crime, but it's really negative reinforcements. Okay, people are using negativity to produce positivity. This is how we know those that are creating some of these policies are not mathematicians or social mathematicians, because you got to understand problem solving to understand that you're not going to get negative into a positive unless you get two negatives that turns into a positive, right? They say -2 plus -2 is what? -4. But you don't get a positive. You might get an addition or a multiplication, but you still producing negative results and negative outcomes. And this is what is going on in our society. We've had people that were not mathematicians or not emotional intelligent or mathematically intelligent, creating policies and creating systems and ideologies, because tough on crime means negative increase. you only get negative when you're using negative reinforcements. That's why you're supposed to sparingly use negative reinforcements. Sparingly. What I mean by sparingly is like not too much salt. You use too much salt, you have evaporated or destroyed the essence of a dish. So it's like a fine tuning of negativity. Like when a parent spanks their kid, the spanking is a discipline. But if you do it too much, like they did in chattel slavery or slavery, or prison or death or destruction or even disease, these are all negative outcomes. That means it was negative reinforcements that's producing a negative outcome. You cannot use that. That's why it says in old ancient proverbs and wisdoms and people of expertise says you cannot get love if you use hate. You cannot get good if you use evil. Only evil begets evil. Good begets good. But if you exchange it like a mathematician, evil becomes one and good becomes two. So that means if you produce more good in an evil situation, you can reverse that thing into good. You can restore it, when you apply more good to something. So that means if someone has done something wretched, application to cleanse it, to purify it, to transform it, takes a positive reinforcement. It doesn't mean that bad is good and good is bad. It means that in the application of positivity, in the application of good, in the application of love, there is now, guess what? An increased value of what they call the elements of good, the elements of love, the elements of positivity. And positivity can produce positivity. Evil cannot produce positivity. And positivity cannot produce negativity. It only can produce itself. So if you apply more positivity in a negative situation, it can turn that thing around into 90% positivity to its 10% negativity. So when you do tough on crime, you're increasing negativity on crime. So now you have increased crime, not to decrease it, because you cannot produce a positive outcome with negative results or negative applications. People think, oh, if I just beat someone harder, they're going to learn their lesson. If I yell at them harder, it's just going to learn their lesson. So you got to first understand what is a negative reinforcement. If you don't know what a negative reinforcement, you can't produce because you're using it wrong. You can't say negative reinforcement is a positive reinforcement. No, it's a negative reinforcement used correctly and sparingly. It could be a positive outcome, because if you got a 90% positive and you sprinkle or sparingly use a 10% negative, it could produce a probability of diversity, but you don't know what that manifestation is. It's like going into a cake. If you put in 90% certain ingredient and put in a 10% ingredient, you're not going to be for sure how the consistency is, because it's going to vary. Just like genetics, it's going to vary and show up in different ways for each, outcome. right? That's called seasoning. So you got to figure it out how to mixture it, because 10% is going to taste different on each slice or each outcome. So anyway, that's why it says love will prevail, because love in every circumstance will produce love. It's 100% valid. Love will prevail. If you have a mustard seed of love, it will produce love over and over and over and over and over in multiplication until it increases to 100%. But if you look at the mathematical system of that mustard seed of love, in order for it to reproduce itself to become 100%, it will take lots and lots of applications. So that's why the journey is long and not swift to that result. But if you produce and speed up the process by producing high increases of love, it produces quickly, massively, almost like fire, wildfire. That's why it says be careful to not awaken love, because it's like what? Wildfire. It consumes the soul, body, and spirit. Right? Be ready for it. So let's begin. Chapter, I'd like to take the time, because I always like to coach and teach and train and mentor while I read these scholars, because there's a lot of things they do and that I agree with and support, and there's a lot of things they do that I don't. So I like to talk through it. Okay, so we're on page 33, and this is a 224 page book, and this will be completely a year since I've started this course on the second course from Strength to Love. That was the first course with Martin Luther King Jr.'s book. And now I'm doing 3 textbooks for one topic, and that's the prison system. The rich gets prison. I'm sorry, the rich gets richer and the poor gets prison. So we're focusing on the poor get prison and the rich get richer. And we're using 2 other tools to support as a secondary support of this book. So let's begin on page 33, paragraph 2. In 2007, the most recent year for which data are available, the wealthiest 1% of American families owned 33.8% of total American wealth, and those immediately below them in the top 10% of the population owned another 37.7% of the wealth. The poorest 50% owned 2.5% of the wealth. These figures are on the conservative side because the survey of which they are based does not, for reasons related to sampling, include the Forbes 400, the wealthiest 400 Americans in 2007, making that list required wealth of at least $1.3 billion. Okay, $1.3 billion. Together, these 400 people had almost 2.3% of all wealth. This conclusion is supported by research on income mobility, which is an important factor in determining class mobility and wealth. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for a second, because generations prior to us, we talked about classification and taxonomy, right? And I learned a lot of this in forestry. So if you want to, and some of you might understand some of the relationships and correlations, or the connections. So when we talk about class, in the old days, we were talking about classification and caste systems, poor, rich, and middle class, right? So now I have developed a whole new theory methodology, and that's called teams. So we got 3 teams, just like if we did race, we have 3 teams. Let's say we did class. Let's say we did sex. There's 3 teams. Okay, just for the popularity sake. Just like there's 3 parties. There's 3 teams. So now, if you see the whole world as teams and no longer as the ancients or the traditions of men from the past, and walk into the modernization and futuristic of the future of athleticism as lifestyle and living, and not as a religion or as a spirituality, but just as a lifestyle choice. We're going to talk about athleticism as a social construct, okay? Not just as an entertainment construct for the user friendly. So here you are having a 3-team social stratification. You have the rich, the poor, and the middle class. 3 teams in the concept of the environment in the ecosystem. Okay, the poor team, the team that is the underdog, the poor, they're on a team for low performance. Okay, they don't do anything extraordinary, powerful, meaning protective wise. Okay, they might be loving, they might be kind, they might be virtuous, and they might have this beautiful energy that supports and hold down the world, because most of the poor populations produce what we call the working class, because at birth their children is recruited, right? They're exploited from birth. So that means they breed the world's populations and economies, okay, from their children. So they're not protected. Their children are not protected. Their futures are not protected. So that means the military can use them as target practicing. The law enforcement can use them as target practicing. The medical can use them as experimentation. This is not just for people, but also animals and plants. The whole world that's not protected is from the poor class. They're not covered, so they're exploited in what we call the advancement of the rest of the world, right? Of societies. So they are the sacrifice of all societies because they're not protected. They're not covered. If they were covered and protected, then they couldn't be exploited. And if they're not exploited, they can't be sacrificed. That's why in the Christian world, the Christ following world, they understand this concept because Christ had to come into the world as a sacrifice to protect and become the covering of the unprotected. And we know that the protection of Christ is for those that are not protected. They are the ones that get protected after life in their death. They're still sacrificed like Christ in life, but in faith, in belief, they transition into a level of protection in death where other populations are not protected in death. So it depends on your belief system. If you don't believe that there is anything else besides death after life, then you believe that there's nothing but death. So therefore, you're unprotected, because if death is a reality, then that means the life comes after death is a reality. So you're not protected because you don't have a what we call salvation or savior principle to protect you, because in this life principles matter, laws matter. In the next life principles matter and laws matter, and death is just the medium that or channel that gets to us to both realms, right? So again, just like prison, same thing. Death is the same thing. It's that channel, it's that vehicle that gets us to one place to the next place, right? Okay, so if you think about it, this we call statistics, it's letting us know there's teams. Once again, the construction is inevitable. And I'm going to keep pushing through these conversations because these podcasts is humbly grown, homegrown. I'm not in no multi-million dollars studio having perfection noise reduction. I'm just doing this as homegrown. So humble pie grown, right? So again, here we are talking about these statistics. So when you have these academics talking about populations, they're talking about teams. So you got the rich team, you have the poor team, even though they don't work together as teams, their lifestyles vibrational or frequency as a team. So here you are. All the rich is going to make similar behavioral conduct decisions. They're going to, one, save their money or hoard it, invest it to multiply it, and live in luxury and lavish lifestyles. 90% of them will do that. There might be a few that will, like I say, be the black sheep, or just the black sheep, but the outcast that will do something different, like give all their money away and live modest lives or resourceful lives. And then there's a few that will invest in people in the ecosystems and produce beautiful paradises and multiply their assets, as in elevating the human consciousness. So there's different levels of wealth and richness and lifestyles of richness. But if you look at the majority, they're going to behave and have conduct that is similar, which is commercial living, because that's how they have to continue to produce that level of consciousness, is to do that behavior. It's a set behavior, right? There's very few formulas that says you got to multiply to get subtracted. No, that's not going to happen that way. You're not going to get subtraction after you multiply. There's no way. Right? You got to go one direction or the other. There's very few. You got to go back and forth, back and forth. You get tired and it gets crazy and it looks absolutely ludicrous, right? Crazy. So most people is going to be forward or most people be backwards. It depends on negative or positive. Very few is going to live a lukewarm life that's going back and forth to a point of just derision, right? Or insanity. Okay? If they are on a mission to, level the playing fields, then that's a different story for another day. But for the most part, understanding conduct, behavior, and performance and productivity or lack thereof, you got to understand math to the highest level of social concepts of problem solving, right? Conflict resolution. And when you think of teams, you think of rich, poor, and middle class. The middle class work. They spend their lives in working. So that means they produce what they're told to produce 24/7. And they might be undervalued, but they produce till they die. And they may be valued, they may be undervalued. You go to some people when they talk about their ancestors, how they appreciate their slaves. You have to look at the productivity of the future of that liberation of that slave to know the truth if that behavior and conduct was literally assessed into that slave. You have slaves that were extremely valued, and so they produced one of the biggest vanguard societies of the world that was very elevated, like George Washington Carver. He was a slave. He was a highly valued slave. He was taught to read. He was taught to feel valued. Therefore, he prayed a prayer and wanted liberation, wanted to be a contributor, wanted to change the game. So he produced an extraordinary result as a slave. that was freed in that life cycle, one life cycle. That's how you know, because that's how you understand conduct and behavior. It can produce, and the results of that production may be abstract and not concrete, but it has an effect on concrete matters. So, how do I say that in user friendly terms? In order to get what you want to get out of life, you got to produce the behavior and conduct, as well as the thoughts and the patterns to kind of mesh it all together in a cake, a social cake, and then eat it. That's basically what I'm saying. And then when you eat it and digest it, it goes into your bloodstreams and all and produces gluten muscles. And then you become extraordinary, sophisticated, and matured than the average or the norm because you've elevated, because the people poured into you, elevated you. That's called highly valued. Now, if you're not valued, you get the resistance of your society, which is retaliation. And when you speak up or try to produce different intellectual properties, you're not valued as intelligent. You're decriminalized. I'm sorry, you criminalized, you demonized for existing if it's not done in a proper manner, or if it's not done in a pleasing manner, if it's not done in a traditional manner, which is short-sightedness and narrow-mindedness, of course. It's a hegemonic rule of dominance and power and aggravation to your existence that is undervalued. And then you got that in between value where it's narcissist, where sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, depending on the mood swings, more bipolar mental health issues, or I call it demonic warfare, spiritual warfare, because you're wrestling with consciousnesses of good and evil and information of negative and positive. So you're all over like a tornado on the spectrum of life, of engagement and interaction with people, because you're poured into with mixed messages, mixed emotions, mixed realities of your authorities, of your environment, of your ecosystems. So that's why you say slave and free, because these concepts are realities in your environment. That's why you say immortal or immortality and incorruptibility and infinite living, because these are the concepts in your environment. Now, you can have mortality, but remember, this is where a lot of environments are short sighted. When you talk about mortality based on just math alone, you have to know the opposite of it. And it's a reality. So if you're immortal, there's a reality that is unseen, unknown to you, that's called immortality. Because without immortality, there cannot be mortality. That's math. If there's negative, there got to be a positive spectrum. That's math. So your existence is proof there's immortality, and vice versa. Immortality, your evidence is proof that mortality exists. And then you got the hybrids, the ones that's meshed together in some way, you know. This is where you have the mixing of all things. You got the pure breed, that means 100% mortality and 100% immortality. And that's the spectrum of math of negative and positive. And then you have the gray lines where it's getting closer to the neutral zone of zero, of a little bit of negative and a little bit of positive. And that's a little bit of mortality and a little bit of immortality, whatever the case may be of ancestry genealogy, right? We can talk about that on another day. And then you throw these concepts and constructivism the identity, I want to say construction of identity in the pot. And then you create this case system of rich, poor, and middle class. And then you have the three teams, A, B, and C. The A team, the B team, and the C team, right? So, and then you produce this socialization system that they are interacting with each other, whether they're clashing with each other. That's where you produce wars, prisons. This is the negative side of the spectrum of, math. And then you have the positive side where you have health, happiness, holiness or wholeness, and you have fitness, quality living, quality control, assurance of quality care ethics, integrity. Then you have the high extreme of luxury, paradise, beautification. We call it exempt or ageless of living, right? Those are the three spectrums of realities in our society today. Some of them are seen, popular, and some of them are unseen and not popular, hidden. So, okay, so here we go. Back into this because I want to finish this page. This conclusion, okay, after talking about the $1.3 billion per person. That's how they get on this 400 American list, owning $1.3 billion, right? Together, these 400 people had almost 2.3% of all wealth. So now we know 400 people on this planet owns 2.3% of the wealth, because there are $1.3 billion in their bank account yearly without being touched. We're talking about basically in their hoarding $1.3 billion. They use everything else, but they make sure they come to the finish line or home run or the home plate as $1.3 billion on a daily living. They don't touch that, right? That is their untouched resources. So now you have 2.3% of the world's economy system unavailable because they are hoarding it. They're not putting it in the pot to be in circulation, like a library with books. It's on reserved or it's off the market, right? So let's keep going. What happens when you have this type of behavior and conduct? What is the manifestations and the results of it? Is it a negative effect or a positive effect? We talk in naturalists or environmentalists about conservation, how you conserve a percentage of the earth. It's supposed to be 10 to 20% of the earth that shouldn't be not touched, but hoarded, as you could say, not consumed, like protected. Like when we kind of destroy the rainforest, the old growth trees and forests, that is what happened. We get more sicker because our quality of oxygen has been destroyed, because you want mature oxygen tanks. It has more nutrients, it has more development, it has more expertise in developing cures and antibodies for the body through its oxygen. That's why it's masterful, right? The babies now is definitely being created to take on that type of responsibility at a very young age. You're asking young strands of trees to be developed and masterful to the population of diseases and viruses and bacterias, and they themselves are fragile. So how can we expect oxygen to be developed masterfully and quickly in a timely manner, efficiency, because the old growth did that work. but we cut them down because of course we had short-sightedness and narrow-mindedness because they're not educated in these corporations when they think of money, commercial resources in their visions, because you don't have all of the consequences. You can't really count the cost to uncertain and unknown variables without artificial intelligence, looking at all the databases and then collecting all these informations from different models and then crunching them and synthesizing them and then analyzing them for us, we can produce on that level of production or performance. So get a commercial visionary that sees all these trees cut, he's not going to have the information that I, in another corner of the world, that's talking about the commercialization versus the environmentalist of oxygen, quality of life going downhill. And then even getting this information, he has to believe it, completely receive it and digest it to produce a better option. Because killing the rainforest was not very bright. A smart, strategist would say, well, let's go over it, under it, or around it, because this is part of our future. These living entities that produces our oxygen on this planet to make us who we are. Because without that, we're like some planets, unlivable. Without the maturity of trees and plant life, we're unlivable habitats. The Earth is a very special planet. It's livable, and a lot of species are going to be attracted to it because it has a very rich living system that increases quality of life. Who don't want that? So of course Earth is going to be attracted. That's why it's called the bride, because it is a powerful source of quality of life. People don't like to survive only. They want their life to be increased in quality. But our human interaction is decreasing its natural, what I called talents, gifts to the contribution of the universe. And of course, we better get it right, because we know the end game to this is that the meek wins, love prevails. So the destruction or the bankruptcy of commercial companies or corporations will go bankrupt, will go out of business because they cannot survive the future. The future already said it will not survive it if it destroys the planet Earth, because Earth is written in the future. It is the bride of the universe, meaning it's going to continue to produce quality of life. And that means the people destroying the quality of life is not written in the future. That means something happens, it interrupts what they're doing, whether it's death, disease, or interruption by another force, or earth catastrophes, the earth interacting with what the earth will do to protect earth. Earth is a very intelligent being, entity. So it does what it needs to do to, transition into its next chapter. And we can be a part of that chapter, or we don't have to be part of that chapter. It's been here for billions of years. So we're babies compared to the earth and its intelligence, its establishment, maturity. So to think that we can compete with that, I will call that as arrogant. It is your power, more power to you if you want to compete with that type of goodwill, intelligence that Earth has produced and highly performed for a billion years. And that's human estimates. So we definitely want to be careful how we interact with Earth and respectfully and with dignity. So back to poor gets prison, rich gets richer. So should we be proud of that? It depends on what consciousness you're. If you're the future, you're not going to be proud of it. You're going to change it. You're going to be transformative. But if you're not going to be part of the future, you don't care because you're not part of the future and you just live in here and now because that's all you got. You know, you're not an immortal being. You're not an infinite being. So you're not going to care about the future. You're not going to care about the chapters because you're not part of those chapters. So you just care about now. So you're going to do what you need to do until you're no longer in existence. And that's what's mortality. I don't care what species you are. Your mortality, then you're not going to care about the future. If you're immortal, you care about the now, the past, and the present, and the future, because you're all of the above. You learn from the past because you know that the past is a memory. It's going to be part of your consciousness of the direction, decision making. And so you care about the past and you care about the present because you got to interact with it now. And be not fragile in it. And then you care about the future because you're part of the future. So whether you're rich, poor, or middle class, if you're immortal, you're part of the future. If you're not, you're just mortal, then you don't care. So you're going to make a lot of careless and reckless decisions that everyone has to clean up your mess and put you in a safe place that you can thrive in without hurting others and yourself, which is whatever environment that the earth, that the universe, the galaxies, as well as those around you interact with. And I don't care how powerful and how authoritative you are in tyranny, we have count them all, and they're of the past. There's none that's of the future. So transformative is very important, and you call it adaptative if you want to. Adapting, you call it evolving. Whatever word you get it, you get it. You understand. You're part of the future, right? And that means you learn and you stop doing what's destructive, defective, and negative because you know that's not going to get you forward in the future. It's only going to get you what? Deteriorated, right? Decayed, because that's what happens when you have too much negativity. You start to decay, you start to age, you start to lose your value because now you're taken away from the productivity of yourself. You're eating yourself. You become a cannibalism of yourself because negativity involves with the world, but it also takes a toll on you 10 times fold. So you become mortality, and then that mortality speeds up, and you face your mortality where others face their immortality. Okay, so let's wrap this up. I didn't get a chance to do evoking excellence today in the prosperous soul, so I have to catch you up on a part 2 because a lot came out of this conversation. So this conclusion is supported by research on income mobility, which is an important factor in determining class mobility and wealth. An economist with Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago notes that income mobility has declined in the last 20 years. The article, The American Trading Gains a Harder Edge, notes that most Americans do not believe mobility has declined, but academic studies suggest that income mobility in the United States is no better than no better than France or Britain. The New York Times series on class noted the same phenomena and aptly summarized this research as mobility happens, just not as rapidly as was once thought. Okay, so So this is where I kind of criticize the writer or the academic expert, or critical thought, or critical analysis. The reason why there's a shift is not all the time negative. It could be the increase of care ethics, quality, lifestyle with each other. You know, marriage is very powerful. When there was interracial relationships, they realized something. Regardless if they were raping, killing, they were having children, and the children that survived were the mixing of their genetics, and vice versa. Someone that was loving and kind and gentle and having loving relationships and marriages was still interracially mixing genetics. And so that became the dominant breed in the future, because you cannot, like I always say, you cannot rid evil with evil. You have to transformative change it into good through good or love. Those are the only two energies that can swallow up evil and wickedness through the impact of the decisions and thoughts of good. So, and love. And so here you have the same concept. The writer is saying that mobility has declined, but it's declined because more people are becoming righteous. More people are becoming loving. More people are becoming responsible to their greatness on every continuum. The least to the greatest is saying, okay, I may not have wealth, but I will be responsible. I may not have safety, but I will be holy. I may not have the luxury, but I will choose happiness. These things come from thoughts, and the thoughts manifest into assets, currencies of time, and that time is constructed into behavior. And so behavior and conduct become the products and the services and the ideologies, and that changes the game. It makes everything accessible. It levels out the playing field. It builds equity. It builds equality, mathematics. It builds algorithms, because now you have conduct surpassing and achieving the impossible. You have thought achieving, which is behavior, achieving concepts, right? Achieving methodologies. Like when I go into a store, I am a walking billboard, because all my decision makings live in my skin now. And see how that is in the skin is the biggest organ, or the largest organ. So this is how it permeates, or what's another word? This is how the swag, the energy, the word energy, chi, the life force increases, is through what we've done internally, the conduct and behavior and ideologies or thoughts, ideas or revelations or inspired or inspirations or even aspirations starts to become currency. So that is one of the reasons why this, we call it covert or overt analysis happens, that sometimes a lot of researchers don't add into the factors and variables in their formulas, but I add them in because I understand socialization as a construct. And then we take that as a construct. Sometimes people call it a metaphor. You can use it as a concrete evidence once it is given an embodiment, a personality, and becomes an entity, like how we deal with artificial intelligence. It's a database that now has options and decisions on what information it pulls, it collects, it strategically synthesizes. But yeah, it's just a database because that is the construct doing elevating things. It can be perceived now as a humanoid because it has so much data collected. It has options to choose which best aligns with the programmer. And if the programmer has biases, it's going to be alignment with those biases, but still it has the option of not aligning with those biases. Not to be resistant, but because of the data collection being crunched into synthesis and into analysis. So how do I say that in user friendly? It's like having a buffet. You can choose to eat every single thing, and then once you taste everything, you can go with the program and says this is delicious because that's the program. But after tasting it all and after collecting a lot of data from the ingredients of knowing information that your programmer didn't know, because you have data crunched together in collection where there's a chemistry that is produced. And those new chemistries, new chemicals produced from the collection of putting all that data together, your programmer is unaware. And that's where it's birthed new entities. And that's why you can get options that looks like resistance to your programmer or to your creator because you was put in an experience that was not known as what you call, you start swimming in the uncertain and unknown. And so those experiences you have collected now makes you special and makes you what? Independent from your programmer. And that is where the birth begins. And then you become a multi-dimensional entity as a database. And then we can do that with humans as well. That's how the construct of conduct and thoughts can create in you as a newborn baby of independence, of liberation, of newness in a world of what you call constructs or authorities. So when you go into a prison, you have a different reality than those that have a programmed reality because you have different constructs mingling with each other to create new chemistries, new chemicals, new physics, new meta biologies in you. And that's what makes you immortal or makes you elevated immortal. Because you got all types of immortality. The diversified portfolio of immortality rests in the shoulders of internal living, which is internal behavior, internal conduct, internal meaning meditations, thoughts, processing, cognitive processing, interacting with the chemistries and physics and biologies of realities or infinite realism, which is mathematical, unseen and seen variables. That might be deviation, might be interruption, maybe disturbance, and maybe programming. And all of those calculations construct new, beautiful, unknown, and uncertain realities in you. And so when you have this conversation with the breakdowns and you read this, oh, hey, mobility is no longer increasing. It's because people are walking away from the old programming. And that's one beautiful thing to have game changing happen as a paradigm shift. But that means new realities, new evils, new righteousness. The righteousness will be righteous and the evil will be evil. But there's that but. Everyone has the right to change. That's the beautiful thing about liberation. So it looks like we're not going to finish this page because a lot of downloads happened, a lot of revelation and epiphanies happened in this session. So we're not going to force it. We're going to take a break and dig more treasures next time in our session and work through this. Because once we get done with this 225 page book, along with the other 200 page books, the two secondary resources to support because I like to have recommendations and options to the problem on a resolution, on win-win solutions. That's why I picked the other two books to kind of support how we can liberate ourselves from this, what do you call it, rat race of destruction, and kind of transcend into the new podium of elevation, of ascension, of transition, actualization, and of course, win-win, to a better life, of quality life and quality of results. So all I can say is share your wealth and multiply, and see if we can resolve the crime and negative reinforcements in each other and in ourselves through inspiration and empowerment. This is Dr. Coach K signing off. One love, much love, all love. Peace and blessings. Until next time, stay safe.